judge ready? Noble opponents ready?
Yes.
Is my argument buddy Liza ready? Spectators ready? Then I will begin. My partner, Eliza Jane Fasten, and I vehemently and completely negate the resolution. Resolve the United States to replace means-tested welfare programs with a universal basic income. We have taken it upon ourselves to provide the following definitions and observations. Our first observation is that in this debate, we find it necessary to treat the United States as if Supreme Leader George W. Bush was still in the presidency. We would like to define the United States as the best country in the world, and we would like to define universal basic income as authoritarian pseudo-Maoism. Our first contention is that UBI steals money out of the hands of our valiant troops. America's brave troops are under siege from the firebrands that have infested the Congressional Budgetary Office. As of 2018, the U.S. defense budget was 57% of federal spending. That is hardly anything. Your Honor, Congress had the audacity of spending 1% of their budget on food stamps instead of giving it to the troops. Where do they think we live? Stalingrad? I don't think so, Your Honor. This is America. And in America, our troops are the top priority, and they deserve more money. America is really good at war, and because we're so good at it, we need money for more of it. Many make the argument that war is objectively bad, but this is a very narrow-minded way of viewing things. Take it straight from the prophet, Supreme Leader George W. Bush, when he said, quote, "I just want you to know that when we're talking about war, we're really talking about peace," end quote. So, by that logic, when my opponents advocate for UBI, they are objectively arguing for more war. And the only person who has the right to argue for more war is Prince of Darkness Dick Cheney. Universal basic income sounds like it's pretty expensive, and the US government is pretty strapped for cash. If anything, the US citizens should be paying the government more money, not asking for money from them. We, as the humble servants of the machine, only paid the US government $2 trillion last year, and we're asking for more money from them? In no way did the founding fathers want the government to work for the people. Thomas Jefferson himself once said, quote, "Honestly, I could care less about inalienable rights," end quote. Contention 2, major proponents of UBI are dangerous and also socialists. Subpoint A, Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang was born in Schenectady, New York. That's pretty hard to pronounce. In addition to this, do you know who else is from New York? Jordan Belfort, subject of popular Wes Walker song and my partner's personal hero. And he was bad with money. Therefore, we can assume that everyone from New York, including Andrew Yang, is as well. Subpoint B, Tom McPhee. The most dangerous proponent of UBI is my calculus teacher, Mr. Tom McPhee. Once in class, he thinks that UBI would be a good solution because he couldn't afford his knee surgery on his salary. While this may be true, and it's too bad for him that he can't fix his knee, he gave me a C- on my midterm, and that doesn't sound like I would trust on someone I would trust on public policy because I studied really hard for that test. Contention 3, it shouldn't be that easy to get out of poverty. Your Honor, I cannot stress the importance of American values enough when it comes to UBI, and UBI is essentially a Lockheed Martin missile strike on the heart of the American dream. The whole point of the American dream is that the rich and the government are actively trying to beat you in a fight to get out of poverty. And if you can Joe Rogan spin kick the government, or pull yourself up from your bootstraps, as some might say, you gain enough respect to simply not be poor anymore. UBI makes the fight way too easy for the average Joe, and way too hard for our underfunded government and the charitable and loving 1%. The core of the American dream is the laboring proletariat working to become part of the elite class, but this dream cannot exist in a world of economic equality. Your Honor, if the working class can achieve social mobility, then whose underpaid labor will sustain the lifestyles of American heroes such as Jeff Bezos? Nobody. To quote noted philosopher and economist Max C. Cahill, quote, "Amazon has questionable ethics, but their business model works, I guess," end quote, and I believe that speaks for itself. So it is for these reasons of unquestioning patriotism and a deep hatred for the cold, red state that my partner and I can only see a negative ballot in today's debate. Thank you.
Is everyone ready? Okay.
We affirm contention 1 is winning the war on poverty. Subpoint A is preempting the future. Recession is inevitable, as Kenton in 2019 explains that recessions are a natural part of the business cycle that occurs after the economy peaks. A UBI uniquely grows the economy in 3 critical ways. The first is by improving aggregate demand. Bivens in 2019 explains that the US is not prepared for the next recession because low-income people do not have enough money to spend. This is bad, because lower-income people live paycheck to paycheck, while higher-income people tend to save more. This means that the more money lower-income people have, the better. A UBI would help improve this. According to Martin in 2017, the more money someone has, the more goods and services they can buy, inevitably increasing the demand of those goods and services. Overall, Kenton in 2019 warns that high aggregate demand is good as it represents the demand for goods in the market, meaning that GDP growth parallels that of aggregate demand. The second is jobs. Poindexter in 2018 explains that middle-class jobs are disappearing while wages are declining for the existing ones. A UBI would help improve this situation. Santens in 2017 warns that a basic income would make labor optional. Employers would have to improve pay and work hours to attract employees because people would be able to move more easily from job to job. Altman in 2013 furthers that more and better jobs cause a cycle to loop, in which jobs provide people with better income, increasing consumption. When this extra wealth is spent, the increase in demand spurs companies to hire even more people. The third is innovation in business. Poindexter explains that a UBI would help increase the purchasing power of low-income people, creating new markets that previously wouldn't have existed or lasted. Currently, it's too risky for many to innovate and start new businesses. That's critical, as Klein in 2018 quantifies that 66% of Americans dream of opening a business, but their financial fears are holding them back. Importantly, Medulo in 2018 explains that in the past 10 years, the amount of new businesses dying has surpassed the amount of business births. Detrimentally, Humphreys in 2012 finds that low unemployment, consumer spending, and demand are the factors that drive economic growth, all of which small businesses vastly contribute to. For example, the Office of Advocacy in 2019 reports that small businesses contribute to 44% of the US economy and 2/3 of jobs. It is for these reasons that Schiller in 2017 concludes that a UBI over an 8-year period can expand the economy by 12.56%, $2 trillion in additional wealth. All 3 of our warrants are reasons why UBI would create immense economic stimulus for the US, alleviating further recessions. Critically, Berkeley in 2010 quantifies that the Great Recession of 2008 pushed 64 million people around the world into poverty. Luckily, Binder in 2015 finds that the recession would have lasted twice as long and pushed millions more to poverty if not for economic stimulus. Subpoint B is the trap. Our current welfare system has a trap. Hughes in 2016 explains that if people in our welfare system become entangled in it and remain stuck in poverty, this happens in 2 ways. The first is asset testing. McFarland in 2018 explains that people are turning down jobs and extra hours due to the fear that they will not qualify for certain welfare programs and end up being worse off than before. The second is high tax rates. Hughes continues that the median marginal tax rate for households just above the poverty line is 34%, the highest of all incomes. This is because the CBO in 2020 explains that, quote, the rate at which a benefit phases out increases the marginal tax rate because an additional dollar of earnings results in a reduction in the tax benefit and a larger tax liability. Thus, a UBI replacing means-tested welfare programs means this trap would vanish. Dorfman in 2016 warns that with a UBI, households would not have to go through asset tests. High marginal effective tax rates would also be eliminated. The impact is reducing poverty. The Guardian in 2019 quantifies that 40 million Americans currently live in poverty and statistically has remained the same since 1970. Empirics prove that a UBI is the solution. Kingma in 2016 writes that just a small pilot for UBI program in Namibia dropped the poverty rate to 18% and average earned income beyond UBI increased by 29%. For all these reasons, please affirm.
Would you like any prep time before class? Are you ready?
Yeah. You can have the first question.
Awesome. You talked about the war on poverty, but how can we fight a war that Prince of Darkness Dick Cheney didn't start?
Yeah, so who's the Prince of Darkness, Dick Cheney?
Dick Cheney is the former Vice President of the United States under Supreme Leader George W. Bush.
Okay, so why is that important?
Because he, as we brought up in our first contention, is the only person who has the right to advocate for more war.
Okay, so what's your question?
My question is, how can we advocate for a war, the war on poverty, if Dick Cheney didn't start it?
Like, we can advocate it through a lot of different ways. For example, just like telling the president we want to start a war, right?
Would you like a question?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so like, what's the thesis of your case?
The thesis of our case is that UBI is bad and welfare is less bad. May I ask a question?
Okay, sure.
In the wake of the senseless violence at Antietam Battlefield, September 17th, 1862, is it really appropriate to be politicizing this issue?
I mean, yeah, I'd say a lot of people advocate for UBI, but a lot of people advocate for welfare. I think it's like good to bring this into debate. Can I have a question?
Yes.
Why is it? Can you explain to me exactly why it's bad if it's too easy to get out of poverty?
Well, that's the thing. The core of the American dream is upward mobility. And the problem with that is you can't achieve upward mobility if everyone is already up. So in order to have upward mobility, you have to have somewhere to move up from. And by giving everyone money, it makes it way too easy for people to get higher on the
So
ladder.
Jeff Bezos is pretty rich, right?
Sure is,
Wouldn't you
yes.
say he's still moving upwards in social mobility because he's earning more money each day?
Well, he's at the top already.
But doesn't he just earn more money? Like
Well,
what
yeah.
do you define as social mobility?
Moving from less money to more money in relation to other people's money.
So isn't he moving from less money to more money in relation to other people's money?
Well, he's already on top of everyone else's money.
But he's still earning more, right?
Yeah, but he's not moving in relation to anyone else because he's already on top of everyone else's money.
But isn't, like, by your definition, isn't he just getting richer? Like he's increasing the gap between him and, like, let's say the next richest person?
Yes, but that is not a bad thing. May I ask a question?
Okay, sure.
What does aggregate mean?
Like in the context of aggregate demand, it's the amount of goods, the amount of demand for the goods in the market.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Was your question?
Not really. Do you have one?
Yeah. So I think this is really, really core to your small business argument, and that is, if small businesses are good, why aren't they big?
No, I'm not saying small business. I'm saying small businesses are good for the economy. I'm not saying that they're good for the products that they sell. For example, if we create a small business that's creating a bunch of goods that, like, I don't know, society might deem bad, it's still good because, like, people will be buying those goods, right? And that's inherently good for the economy.
Thank you. I believe that is. Running please. Everybody ready? All right, perfect. Then I will switch to my presentation here. Begin. All right, starting with my opponent's contention. Now, their first contention is the war on poverty. Sure, these fancy terms of aggregate productivity or increased spending power could be mildly beneficial, but the feelings of the wealthy are ultimately more important, as they are the ones who tell the lizard people who run the economy what to do. Without the knowledge of the wealthy telling the lizard people how to run the stock market, how to balance the checks, and what to do to the banks, the economy collapses. My opponents completely fail to take into account the opinions of the lizard people and what they're going to do. Therefore, their entire economic contention and their war on poverty contention falls. If my opponents truly cared about stopping the war on poverty, they would focus on pleasing the lizards. Now, moving on to their second contention about labor. By claiming that increased work and more small business is important, my opponents ignore the real issue at hand, the paychecks of our troops. Why aren't our troops paid more? Your Honor, don't you think it is despicable that we only spend $700 billion on the military? Is disturbing to me. How dare we put money towards healthcare industries? How dare we put money towards the social security when we're not putting more money towards the military? How are we supposed to expand our empire? I don't know, Judge. I would like an answer. It's an answer my opponents cannot provide. My opponents say that welfare is so much worse than UBI, but how do we know that UBI isn't just going to make things way too easy for everyone? That's one slippery slope.
Each point my opponents bring up is pretty valid. It makes it seem like it's going to solve a lot of our problems. And then what are we going to debate about? I love debate, and I'm not going to be able to continue participating in making these arguments if they make things way too easy. Now, going through and going back over our own contentions. Once again, our first contention was money for the troops. Cross-reference this with our attack to their second contention about labor. Again, the government thinks it's okay to spend money on food stamps instead of the military without even considering the feelings of the dynamic duo Dick Cheney and George W. Bush, which is simply rude. My opponents did not say anything about our observations, which means that we're still operating under the assumptions that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney are the supreme overlords of the government, along with the lizard people who run the economy. Therefore, we have to take their feelings into consideration, which my opponents don't really do. Now, moving on to our second contention, that UBI proponents are dangerous, starting with Andrew Yang. Once again, his hometown has a really silly name. And the dark web on the dark web, there's a rumor going around that he's linked to Jordan Belfort. That's pretty dangerous to me. Money laundering is not a good thing. Now, moving on to my subpoint B of Tong McPhee, my calculus teacher. If the man who worked as a train conductor prior to becoming my mediocre calculus teacher believes in UBI, the U.S. Will be able to solve some of its problems, I don't trust him. I don't trust the way he grades my tests, and I don't trust his opinion on public policy. And then finally, our third subpoint is that poverty shouldn't be that easily escapable. I think that's pretty clear. We've reaffirmed that my opponent's argument and their solvency is to simply just solve all the problems. They cannot stand up here and just give you complete and total solvency when there's still a lot to consider, especially the American dream and how else the rich are going to continue amassing power and therefore running the economy through the lizard people. There is an obvious link between each argument that the affirmative is making, that the negative is making, wherein the affirmative just goes for solvency. I don't understand it, Judge, and for these reasons, I can only see a negative value in today's debate. Thank you.
I'll be starting prep time. That was 20 seconds. So, Judge, I'll first be frontlining, and then I'll go down their case. Is everyone ready? Let's start on the first point about the lizard people. First of all, what we're going to tell you is that UBI would also be given to the lizard people because they're part of America. So insofar as that is true, the lizard people are getting $1,000 every single month. So it actually doesn't matter. We're still appeasing the lizard people because they get a UBI. Also, you can actually turn their entire argument against them because Dick Cheney hates the lizard people. We have two words for this. One, they have long tongues. That's just horrible and disgusting. Two, you can't see them in camouflage mode. So why would he support them if they're in camouflage mode? That's like Dick Cheney will never support the lizard people ever. Insofar as that is true, they're in a double bind here. Either they support Dick Cheney or they support the lizard people. They're losing on both fronts. Okay, let's go on to the second response about the paycheck of our troops. I'll respond to this when I get onto the third case. And finally, they say they love debate. I love debate as well. So we're going to extend our subpoint B about the trap. They don't respond to this at all. You can extend all our warning on this. Let's go on to their case. On their observation, we're going to concede the observation that George Bush is president. However, on their observation that the U.S. is the best country, we're going to tell you that Canada is the best country because it's basically the U.S. but colder and more socialist. So insofar as that is true, Canada is the best country. Okay, let's go on to their first contention about the UBI stealing money. First of all, they say Congress needs money for troops. However, a UBI actually gives money to low-income people, and low-income people are more likely to spend than save. This is like the economy growing. This leads to more money for our troops because our economy is better. So insofar as that is true, we can actually turn their argument because we're giving more money to our loyal troops, and insofar as that is true, what they're doing is heresy. Okay, let's go on to the next point about America being good at war. No. Okay, let's go on to the next point about the only one who can advocate for more war is Dick Cheney. However, we're going to tell you that their own evidence is actually going against this. They say that Bush says war is peace. So if that is true, more war is just more peace. So there's not an Eastern entire argument because as long as we have more war, it leads to more peace, and nothing is actually being solved. There's actually no war happening in the first place. Let's go on to the second contention about major proponents. First of all, they try to say that Yang's really bad, but I have a personal anecdote. Once I went to a Yang Gang rally and actually held him up. It was so cool. I was on CNN, okay? That was so cool. And so far as that is true, the pleasure it brought me, I think that's a really good reason to actually vote them down because Yang's a really good person and actually held him up at a rally. And so far as that is true, to appease me, you should be voting for us. You can turn that against them. Let's go into the subpoint B about Tom McPhee. I'm really sorry that you got a C. I feel really bad. But you can't vote for them on that because I actually have a friend named Will McPhee, and he's a really nice guy. And Tom McPhee and Will McPhee might be related. And so far as that is true, you can't be voting on their point because that would just be hurting the feelings of my friend Will McPhee. Finally, on the contention 3 about that it's too easy to get out of poverty, they say that the American dream is to beat up everyone. We'll tell you that UBL will give everyone enough money to actually go to Kung Fu classes so they can learn to beat up other people. And so far as that is true, we're solving better. Again, you can turn the argument against them because when people get more Kung Fu classes, you can beat up people and actually go up the income ladder. And the final point about Jeff Bezos is bald, so whatever he says doesn't matter at all.
Right, you ready for class?
Yeah.
Seeing as the first speaker, would you like the first question?
I was not first.
Sorry, excuse me. Seeing as I'm first speaker, I'm going to take the first question. Considering the massive success that was the Vietnam War and the invasion of Afghanistan, how could you say that the U.S. is bad at war?
No, but the war never happens because war is peace, right? Are you going against the word of your own supreme leader, George W. Bush?
No, I'm just saying that the war that the Prince of Darkness, Dick Cheney himself declared, such as Vietnam, as he was acting as a past self within the paradox of time, which we don't need to get into right now, and the invasion of Afghanistan, and those were massive successes for the United States, right? Like they militarily, like historically wise, were really successful for the United States. So how can you say that the United States isn't bad at war after those two conflicts?
No,
I just
but
don't
we tell you
understand.
that war is peace. So any war that you mention is actually just peace. So nothing's actually happening. It's just peace.
I'm gonna have to give that one to you. Would you like a question?
Yeah, sure. So do you concede the fact that Jeff Bezos is bald?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like a question?
No.
Okay. I'll take another question.
Okay.
Want to go bowling after?
Sure. I'll be down. Okay. Now getting back to the debate, did Dick Cheney himself say that he doesn't like lizard people?
There's a lot of evidence for this. We can pull it up later if you want.
Yeah, I'd like to see that card after this.
Of course, yeah.
After this discussion.
The
Would
author
you like
is
a
very
question?
reputable.
Okay. Okay. Would you like a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, sure. So about the lizard people, right?
Right.
Who do you support more? The Prince of Darkness, Dick Cheney, or the lizard people?
It really depends. It really depends on who has released the best weekly newsletter or where the economy's at, right? Because what I think you're generally ignoring is that the lizard people are the ones that are running the economy. So if the Dow is up, if the industrial average is up, if we're seeing like general increased aggregate productivity, thanks for teaching me that word, by the way. I really like it now. I'm more in favor of the lizard people. But when we're thinking about like war in general and how much I like what the U.S. is doing with arms sales, it typically has to flow to Dick Cheney. That's what I would have to say. What is your persona?
Architect Foster.
Okay, thank you. Would you like a question?
What is your persona?
It switches between giraffe and I'd also have to say mountain fox.
Does it depend on like the day or like?
Yeah, it depends on the day and it sort of depends on like where I wake up. Would you like a question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, do you concede the point that I went to a Yankee rally and it was really cool, so you should vote for us on that point?
I'm gonna have to do that. I like rallies a lot. So
me too.
yeah.
It was actually really cool.
That's
'cause,
totally
like,
you.
I like pull them up. It was like a wave thing.
I went to a Bernie rally. It was really fun. I had a good time. So yeah, I'll give you that for sure. So going back to your point about labor, how do unions factor into this discussion? Are the unions also going to be getting money?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a UBI for everyone, so everyone gets money.
Oh, interesting.
I know.
I didn't think of it that way.
So,
Okay.
can I have a question?
Please.
So, you take into account the feelings of my friend Will McPhee, right?
I'd like to talk to Will before I take his feelings into account, but I trust your opinion. Yes.
Okay. You want a
Okay.
question?
Yeah, one last quick question. Do you believe the rumor that is circulating across the dark web that Andrew Yang and Jordan Belfort are best friends and therefore in bed with each other economically when it comes to their own policy? Like, how do you trust that?
I would concede the fact that they're best friends, but I don't think that means that they're connected economically.
Okay, fair enough. That's fine. Thank you.
Is everybody ready? Great, then I will begin. Judge, something that's important to take in today's debate is the logic, and their logic, it doesn't add up. That being said, I would like to move on to the three main voters of today's debate, which is money, war, and other. Now I'd like to talk about money. Our opponents didn't mention the lizard people in their constructive, and everyone knows on a public forum debate, the constructive is the most important thing to look at. Therefore, all of our points about the lizard people are more important because we said them first. In addition to this, Income inequality is the core of the American dream, and that is something that my opponents haven't mentioned. They advocate for UBI because it'll make all people equal. Is that really that good of a thing? We can't have the American dream if there isn't a ladder to climb. Therefore, by implementing UBI, by getting rid of this ladder, by chainsawing the core of the ladder of the American dream, you are taking away any chance people have of achieving it. Now I would like to move on to war. Our opponents advocate for a non-Dick Cheney war. This is un-American, and it's also super mean to Supreme Leader George W. Bush, who we have already established is still in the presidency, as my opponents did not dispute this in our framework. And he really heavily relies on Dick Cheney. He's like his puppet master and whatnot, you know? In addition to this, we need all of the money we can possibly get for war. And if we put literally any money towards UBI, that is money that is not going towards war. I cannot think of a single time when U.S. military intervention has been anything but excellent. And I don't think my opponents can either. That is because the United States is not just good at war, it is the best at war. In addition to this, my opponents talk about how since war is peace, therefore we're advocating for peace. However, since war is peace, peace is also war. That is basic stuff that I learned in freshman geometry. That means that when we are advocating for war, which is advocating for peace, we are advocating for war in the end. In addition to this, my opponents talk about how they're the more reputable source on Yang. But you know what these are, Judge? These are two Andrew Yang stickers, and I think that speaks for itself. In addition to this, when talking about William McPhee versus Thomas McPhee, if you look at the alphabet, which I believe we all learned at a very early age, at least in my experience, T, it comes before W, which means that we need to take the feelings, the thoughts, and the points that have to do with Tom McPhee, more importantly than those that do with William McPhee. In addition to this, I would really like to double down on the biggest point of our case, which is war. War is the most important thing in America because everyone knows that you're supposed to do what you're good at and you're supposed to spend your time at what you're good at. And in the case of America, this is war. Right now, my opponents are talking, and I will bet you they're not talking about war. But every time me and my partner talk, it is about war. So it is for these reasons that we can only see a negative ballot in today's debate. Thank you.
Case, their case. I'll do on our case, they give you this really horrendous warning about the lizards, but they never respond to the fact that my partner brings up and beautifully extends throughout his rebuttal, or he tells you that Dick Cheney hate the lizard people right now. They're never going to get their support. That's really critical because insofar as that's true, the lizard people are going to be worse off in their world. You can vote on that clean term. But then they have no ink on their subpoint beyond the poverty trap. That's really critical because McFarland tells you on asset testing, he tells you that people are turning down jobs right now because they want to continuously qualify for these these means-tested welfare programs. But then, on our second warrant, we tell you that these high marginal tax rates are at 34%, the highest of all the income brackets. That's really critical because the CBO tells you that this is at 34%. It's pushing these people further into poverty. The impact is simple. These 40 million people that are in poverty right now is going to be solved by UBI. We give you in Pierce and Namibia. We saw the poverty decrease by 18% and income go up by 29%. By voting for us, you have solvency for this poverty. You can vote right there. But then on their side, they drop a few really critical things. They never respond to the fact that it's going to be very good if we become more like Canada. That's really critical because if we become more like Canada literally has like bagged milk. Like if we bring that to the US, that's going to increase like the cultural increase the amount of culture that's inside the US. I'd say on that, that's really good. That's going to increase our soft power. That's really good for the US. But then I also say that people in the US, if we become more like Canada, that's going to be really good because people in Canada are really, really nice. One time, my mom literally was backing her car out of the driveway and she bumped over a trash can. You know what happened? The person's trash can that was, she apologized to my mom. It literally makes no sense. They're so nice. If the US becomes more like that, we're going to see an increase in people being nice to each other. I'd say on that, that's really good. But then, they never respond to the clean turn on their side. We tell you that my partner went to an Andrew Yang rally. That's really critical because he held Andrew Yang up. That brought him a lot of pleasure. I'd say psychologically, that's really good. We're impacting out to improving people's psyche. That's a clean place to vote over there. But then on Kung Fu, on the thing, we'll agree to the fact that it's good to have war, but that are like good for the US to promote war. But then I'd say, insofar as that is true, the UBI is going to be giving people more money to spend on Kung Fu classes. They never respond to that. That's really critical because we tell you that Kung Fu means that people beating up other people is going to become more popular, and we're going to see people rise up the income ladder. Insofar as that's true, that has two implications. The first is that people are going to be better at protecting themselves. That's really good because insofar as that's true, we're going to be saving lives in our world because people are better at self-defense. But then the second implication is that if people start to learn Kung Fu, they're going to be better trained for the military. If people are better trained for the military, we're going to see an increase in conflict because people always want to attack the US. If we're better trained for war, they're always going to be clashing with each other. We're going to see more devastation, which is what our opponents advocate for. We link into that impact better than they do. You can vote for us there. Please vote neg.
You guys want pepper for grand?
That's okay.
Okay. Sam, is my speaker my first question?
Yeah.
Perfect. Lucy, go ahead.
What is your favorite color?
Mine's green, personally.
I think blue is super.
Okay, so that means you're a communist because if you look at the flags of former Soviet bloc nations, both of those colors are included in at least one of them. Would you like a question?
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Oh, totally.
What's your favorite color?
Probably gray.
Gray.
That's kind of. I feel like that's more of a shade.
Yeah, I don't think it's a color. Like, I don't think that qualifies for that.
Silver.
I like silver. It's like that's
So, like,
basically
you're like
gray, but
capitalist, right?
Would you
Like,
like a
money's
question?
like silver is like
Would you
money,
like a
like
question?
currency, right?
Would you like a question?
That was our question.
Then we will have another question.
Yeah, so as you conceded that all American military conflicts have been really beneficial for all parties involved, why would we change our really tactful and intelligent military humanitarian policy by implementing UBI?
Okay,
Because we're actually increasing like our military capabilities, like giving everyone Kung Fu lessons. This will drastically increase our military power and will lead to even more conflict. And insofar as that's the biggest impact in the round, we link it to that better than you. You can have a question.
May I ask a follow-up?
Of course.
Is there any way to prove that Americans will be using their universal basic income money on these Kung Fu classes that you are advocating
Okay,
for?
so
Have you seen the movie Kung Fu Panda?
I have, yes.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah, sorry.
but then I'd say that like
Wonderful evidence.
if people have like incentive to want to be part of the military because it's that important, they're going to take some sort of martial arts class, which I'd say on in balance, it's going to link into all of your impact.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Kung Fu Panda is not set in the United States, correct?
Yes.
But you got the thesis of your case, right? Is that this military is so like we want
The
to.
U.S. military, though.
The U.S. military.
Right,
That's
okay.
right.
No, but you know, the Kung Fu Panda is a pilot program of the UBI in China. So insofar as that is true, we'd say that the same thing applies to the U.S.
Yeah.
Was that pilot program run by like American interests? Like, is there any link back to the American economy?
Well, China's basically America. Like they're the same.
Okay, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So now that we're on the topic of China, do they support UBI?
China, I think they do.
I think
Do
they
we
do.
like China?
Do we like China? I mean, if
Yeah,
China
well,
supports
yeah.
it, why should we?
No, we're basically the same. Like as I said, we're like basically like best buds.
I guess that's true.
I know.
Fair
yeah.
enough. Would you like a question?
Yeah. So do you concede the fact that Canada is good?
No.
Why not?
It's so much colder in Canada than it is here. So I'm from Colorado, and Colorado is colder than California, which where you guys are from.
Yeah.
So basically, compared between the two of us, I am the expert on cold.
Actually, I'm
Therefore,
from
I know
Canada.
which cold is
So-
cold. And Canada cold is a lot colder than Colorado.
I was
So,
actually
like-
born in a snowstorm.
Like when you shoot a gun, doesn't that release like some sort of thermal energy?
Are you saying we should shoot everyone in Canada?
I'm
to
saying
keep
that
them warm?
as far as America has guns, if we're all shooting them, then that
So we're
lowers
gonna
the
invade
temperature.
Canada.
No,
Yes.
we're just shooting guns just like because like we love shooting
I
guns.
can see.
No,
No,
like, you could, like, shoot-
even if you do
That's
want to
fine,
invade,
that's
even
fine.
if you do want to invade Canada, I'd say that war is good, so we're still
Alright.
doing that.
Okay. Remaining prep, please, which I believe is 145. Okay. Before I give this rebuttal, I'd just like to give a couple of thank yous specifically to Andre Metzger and Max Melamab for all the time that they devoted to me throughout my debate career. I truly, deeply appreciate it. David McKean as well. That was incredibly important to me. Yeah, that's really all I have to think. So let me get into my final focus. Again, voters are obviously money and war. Alright, so starting out with money. We both agree on both the neg and the pro that money is a good thing, but my opponents think that more money for the poor is good. We've proven that throughout this round, the best money is military money, which in turn is Prince of Darkness Dick Cheney money, which, as I procured my final answer in CX, because of the close relationship between the lizard people and Dick Cheney, it's lizard people money. So, with this theory, it really comes down to good American values. Again, we've proven that lizard people money is the most important money. That's gone like uncontested. So I think that could generally flow to the neg. Now, moving on to American values, which is another voter I've decided to throw in here. It really comes down to good old American values. War, football, freedom for those who can afford it, and lizard people money. The neg is the side that solves for each American's individual problems, which I don't understand. What we solve for is American values, and that is the true voter that you should be focused on. Now, moving on to war, my opponents never disagreed with us that every U.S. military conflict has been really beneficial for all parties involved. So, when it comes down to it, we have to keep doing what we're doing. So, using the theory conceptualized by Gnome Shotgun Champ Chomsky, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Welfare is letting us have these awesome wars, so we might as well keep it. I don't really know how the government works in its intermachinations or specificities, but when we're really looking at it, welfare is somehow allowing us to have these awesome and successful wars. And welfare is also allowing us to keep doing what we're doing, which is being awesome. And because I love America and because I hate the red state, I can only see an affirmative ballot in today's debate. However, I would like to point out that my opponent has found a loophole in the debate system. He removed his shoes during crossfire, immediately giving him the win. Thus, because he brought up because he found a loophole within the rules of public forum debate, I must concede this debate and give it to him. That was a really tactful move, and I respect it.
Thank you. out of respect, I will still be giving my final focus.
Thank
And
you.
I'll
Thank
take
you.
the rest of my prep starting now. Before I begin, I would like to give thanks to everyone except for Sebastian Dunbar, who has not been supportive at all throughout this entire tournament. But you, Judge, thank you so much for dealing with all of this. And with that, I'm going to begin my final focus. Jason and I are bringing the sexy back, and that's with the UBI. Start on our case, first of all, on the lizard turn. We're going to tell you, like, Dick Cheney hates lizards, and he's never going to support lizards. This goes clean conceded throughout the entire round. You should buy this front line. This means that, like, Dick Cheney will never support lizards, and then we get any, like, offense off of this turn. Going to supplement the welfare trap, you can just clean extend everything on this. Like, the welfare trap exists, and that leads, like, people have been pushed into poverty. And so far as that's true, you guys only started, like, with any solvency because actually, like, be out of poverty. Welfare trap puts 40 million people into poverty. Let's go to the third case. First of all, extend the overview that they don't touch. Like, Canada is good. It has back notes, and they have really nice people. And insofar as that is true, we're gonna always win. This is like a critical turn. This turns our entire case. If we win that Canada's good, they can't win. Finally, let's go ahead and turn on the Andrew Yang rally again, which they dropped. We should tell you that, like, Andrew Yang actually, like, I picked up Andrew Yang, and that was psychologically good for me. Insofar as that is true, that's another reason to vote for us on their case. And finally, the turn, like, they try to, like, the only thing that they extend on their case is the whole argument that war is really good. However, we're going to tell you that you guys actually leads to more war because you guys leads to more kung fu lessons, which is the people getting higher training for war, which is more war. Insofar as that is true, we're solving for their own impact better than they are. But finally, the clearest voter. The clearest way to vote in this entire round is that UVL will use on Crunchyroll anime subscriptions. And so far as that is true, anime leads to infinite well-being and allows us to transcend the material realm and become one with God. Amen. And so far as that is true, we're always going to be winning the debate here because we're actually using a UBI to actually get people to be able to, like, buy anime subscriptions and become one with God. Star this card. Aha! And so far as that is true, the only clear way to vote for us is with this anime intention. Please vote. Huh? Please vote out.
I don't shake hands, but I do fist bump. Can I have a hug?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Do you hug or fist bump, Judge?
What's going on my county? Nah.
Fair enough.